Okay, let's dive right in. Picture this. You're waiting for something incredibly important, not just for, say, a few months or maybe a year,
Mm-hmm.
but for 25 years. A full quarter of a century. What would that even feel like?
It's almost impossible to imagine, isn't it, the sheer frustration.
It really is. And, well, we've just uncovered this truly astonishing story coming out of the Telangana High Court.
Yes, a very recent ruling,
Yeah,
handed down July 5th, 2025.
exactly. And it brings that exact feeling, that unbelievable decades-long wait, right into focus.
And crucially, it's not just about the delay itself, but about who's directly accountable for it.
That's the key part. So that's our mission for this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
To really unpack the layers here.
Absolutely. We need to go back a bit, understand the history behind it.
Trace the journey of this family fighting for their rights for so long.
And then look at what the specific judgment tells us about, well, the efficiency or maybe the stark lack of it in our legal systems sometimes.
Yeah, this isn't just reading a legal document. It feels much more like a gripping saga.
It definitely has that quality. A story of incredible perseverance against bureaucratic inertia.
So let's start with the immediate shockwave, the recall verdict itself.
Right. So the headline event, July 5th, 2025, the Telangana High Court finds a senior advocate Arsas 50,000.
Okay. And not just any fine, right? This was specific.
Extremely specific.
Yeah.
It was for delaying this one particular property case for that astounding 25 years.
25 years, that's wow. That's more than just a delay. It's a significant chunk of someone's life.
It really is.
So what's the real significance of a fine like that? Is it just a slap on the wrist, or is it sending a bigger message?
I think it's definitely meant as more than a slap on the wrist. It feels like a clear statement about accountability.
Accountability within the legal profession itself.
Exactly, especially concerning these incredibly prolonged delays that can sometimes happen. This wasn't just bureaucratic delay in general. The court identified a specific individual, the competent officer under the relevant act, who was a senior advocate.
Okay, so the person meant to resolve it was the one fined for not resolving it.
Precisely. The court essentially said, you are responsible. You failed to act for over 2 decades, and there's a direct consequence for that inaction.
And the fine itself had a unique destination, didn't it?
It did. The court ordered the Rs 50,000 to be paid not to the court or the government, but to the Scenic Welfare Board, Telangana, or the Armed Forces Flag Day Fund.
That's unusual, like a parking ticket where the money goes straight to charity.
Kind of. It adds another layer, doesn't it? It makes the penalty feel perhaps more impactful, maybe more socially conscious. It underlines that the inaction had a cost and the penalty aims to create some positive social value.
Interesting. So to really get why this delay happened and why it matters so much, we need that historical context you mentioned.
We absolutely do. This isn't just about a random plot of land. Its roots go deep into a major historical event.
We have to rewind all the way back to 1947.
Yes, the partition of India. A truly monumental and often traumatic moment that led to the creation of India and Pakistan.
And triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Millions displaced.
And this huge movement of people created a unique legal and social situation, particularly regarding property.
You mean the evacuee properties?
Exactly. Lands, houses, assets left behind by those who migrated, primarily to Pakistan in this context. These weren't just abandoned, they came under government control.
Okay, so the government steps in to manage these properties.
Right. And to do that formally, a legal framework was needed.
Which brings us to the specific law at the heart of this case.
The Evacuee Interest Separation Act of 1951.
What was its main goal?
Its purpose was actually quite clear: to sort out ownership, especially for properties that were jointly owned by people who migrated and people who stayed in India. The idea was to separate the evacuee interest from the non-evacuee interest.
So it was designed to bring clarity and resolution.
That was the intent, absolutely, to provide a mechanism for settling these complex property situations left in the wake of partition.
But here's the irony, right? An act designed for resolution
Becomes central to a decades-long deadlock in this specific case. It shows how even laws with good intentions can get tangled up, can become, part of the problem rather than the solution when bureaucracy and maybe other factors come into play.
So let's connect this history to the family at the center of it all. Saleha Fatima Begum.
Yes, her story really brings this whole complex history down to a human level. Her brothers migrated to Pakistan during partition.
Which meant their share of the family property automatically fell into that category of evacuee, property.
Correct. So Saleha Fatima Begum, who remained in India, decided she wanted to purchase that share, consolidate the family holding.
And she did that.
She did. In 1962, she purchased these lands, her brother's former share, for Rs, 38,415. Seems straightforward enough.
Well, it wasn't.
No. Here's the critical twist, the error that set everything off course. When the official sale certificate was issued later that year, December 17th, 1962,
Yes.
a huge chunk of the land, 43 acres to be precise, was just omitted, left out.
43 acres. Just missed. How does that even happen? Was it negligence? A simple clerical error?
The records don't specify why it happened, but the fact is it did. Imagine you buy a large property, you pay for it, but the legal document confirming the sale is missing a substantial part of what you bought.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about a small backyard plot here.
Not at all. These lands were spread across numerous villages in the Jangan Taluk of Warangal district. Places like Kundaram, Bakal, Samudrala, Jangan town itself, Metter, Madur, Singarajpalli, the list goes on.
Wow. So a widespread, significant omission.
Absolutely. It wasn't a minor discrepancy. It was a fundamental flaw in the documentation of her purchase.
And that flaw triggered, well, decades of frustration.
Decades is putting it mildly. Saleha, and later her legal heirs, spent years, lifetimes really, trying to get this mistake corrected.
What did they do?
They approached, as the court documents mention, every office imaginable. They went through all the supposed channels.
But nothing worked.
Worse than nothing. The issue just got more and more tangled. Third parties started making claims on the land, complicating things further. It became this messy, multi-layered legal battle.
Just trying to fix an error from 1862.
Exactly. And then you hit the period around the year 2000.
What happened then?
Well, in 2000, the High Court actually directed the family to go back to the competent officer under that 1951 Evacuee Interest Separation Act. The very mechanism designed to sort these things out.
Okay, so back to the designated authority. That sounds promising.
You'd think so. And in 2002, that officer did issue an order. They ordered a status quo on the land, basically freeze everything as it is.
And then, resolution.
And then nothing.
Nothing.
For 25 years, the matter just stalled completely. Like a car parked and forgotten in a garage, gathering dust. The file just sat there unresolved from 2002 onwards.
25 years of official status quo, which meant stagnation.
Total stagnation. No progress, no decision, just waiting. Think about the human cost of that. Saleha Fatima Begum likely passed away during this period. Her children likely grew old fighting this.
It's truly justice delayed, justice denied, personified.
Absolutely. 2 whole generations effectively lost their rights, their ability to use or benefit from land the family had legally purchased back in 1962.
So who finally managed to break this deadlock?
It was the 3rd generation, Saleha's grandson, Abul Khair Nazaruddin Kamran. He's currently a resident of the UAE.
So he picked up the fight.
He did. He filed the petition that brought this whole agonizingly slow case back before the High Court recently. It's like this legal battle became a grim family inheritance.
An heirloom nobody wanted but couldn't get rid of.
A perfect way to put it. Fighting for something fundamental that should have been settled decades ago.
And this time, the court, under Justice C.V. Bhaskar Reddy, clearly felt enough was enough.
Oh, absolutely. The ruling on July 5th, 2025 was unequivocal. That Rs. 50,000 fine wasn't just symbolic.
It was directly aimed at the person responsible for the delay.
Yes. The senior advocate who is acting as the competent officer, the judgment specifically states the fine was for sitting on the application for over 2 decades. Direct accountability.
And we already mentioned the unique destination for that fine, the Sainik Welfare Board or the Armed Forces Flag Day Fund.
Right. That unusual but maybe quite effective way of ensuring the penalty had a broader positive consequence.
What really strikes me, though, is how the court explicitly acknowledged the human impact.
That's crucial. Justice Reddy didn't just look at the legal technicalities. The ruling recognized the immense hardship.
Mentioning the 3 generations.
Explicitly, acknowledging that 2 generations had essentially lost their rights during this fight, and the 3rd, the grandson, is still fighting for land bought way back in 1962.
It really drives home that old saying, doesn't it? Justice delayed is justice denied.
It couldn't be clearer. When delays span lifetimes, the eventual justice can feel incredibly hollow for those who bore the brunt of the weight.
So let's unpack the broader implications. What does this mean, first, for the family?
Well, for Abul Khair Nazaruddin Kamran and his family, it's obviously a victory, but a profoundly bittersweet one.
Bittersweet after waiting literally lifetimes.
Exactly. Imagine your whole life, your parents' lives, overshadowed by this fight to correct a fundamental error on a property deed from the 1960s. It's a huge burden finally lifted, but at an immense cost.
And what about the system itself? What questions does this case raise?
Oh, it raises some critical, quite uncomfortable questions about legal efficiency, especially with these historical disputes tied to things like partition.
Like the Evacuee Interest Act becoming part of the problem.
Precisely. An act meant for resolution became, in this instance at least, a recipe for endless litigation, a maze rather than a pathway.
And the competent officer role.
That's the real irony here. The person designated to solve the problem, the hero of the process, if you will, effectively became the villain through sheer inaction. It highlights a vulnerability in the system where individual inaction can cause decades of paralysis.
So is this ruling a genuine wake-up call? A sign that things might change?
It certainly feels like a wake-up call for accountability, both within the bureaucracy and the legal profession handling these roles.
But does it signal a real shift towards faster resolutions? Or are the underlying systemic challenges still too big?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The evidence of huge backlogs in similar cases suggests the challenges are definitely ongoing. This one case got resolved, finally, with a rather unique penalty.
Maybe that unique penalty is the key, trying a different approach.
Perhaps, maybe directing the fine towards a social cause adds a different kind of pressure or moral weight. It's hard to say if it will be a trend, but it's certainly noteworthy.
It does make you think about the absurdity of it all sometimes.
It really does. It's almost like the legal system is sometimes like a restaurant.
Go on.
Well, you go in, you place your order. I'll have my rightful property, please, with a side of clear title deed.
Okay, I see where this is going.
And then you wait.
Yeah.
And wait. And 25 years later, your order finally arrives.
By which time you're probably too old to enjoy the meal, or maybe not even there anymore.
Exactly. And the restaurant just fines the chef 50 grand and gives it to charity as an apology. It's a bizarre way to run things, isn't it?
It definitely puts bureaucracy time into perspective.
Mm-hmm. In their world, maybe 25 years is just another Tuesday, what feels like an eternity to us. Just another file moving slowly through the system.
So wrapping this up, we've journeyed through a truly captivating case. It started with what seemed like a small mistake back in 1962.
A mistake that spiraled into a 25-year legal battle spanning 3 generations.
Culminating in this landmark ruling just recently, July 5th, 2025.
It's an incredible story of perseverance, no doubt about it.
But also a really stark reminder of how long the shadow of history can be and just how slow justice can sometimes feel. It's not just about law, it's about lives.
Absolutely. And this whole deep dive really leaves us chewing on a pretty profound question, I think.
Which,
if one family's fight for 43 acres, land they bought fair and square decades ago, can get stuck for 25 years just because of one official's inaction spanning 3 generations, what does that tell us about the real cost of justice delayed?
the hidden costs, the human toll.
Exactly. How many other cases like this, these sort of cursed artifacts of litigation, are still out there, gathering dust in files, consuming people's lives and legacies while they wait for a final chapter?
And maybe more to the point, what's our collective responsibility here? How do we make sure that justice isn't measured in decades, but ideally in days, so people can actually live their lives?
Something important to think about, definitely.